At the end of 2024, Max Verstappen was crowned world champion for the fourth time in a row. In a season of brilliance marked by the rise of McLaren to the top. And in 2025, things didn't start off great for the world champion. McLaren seemed to be strong in testing, and it didn't take long to find out how much. In the first qualifying of the year, the McLarens dominated, with Norris taking pole position by almost 4/10 of a second from Verstappen, with Piastri trailing Lando just by 84 milliseconds.
Not a bad way to start the year. Well done, everyone. Unbelievable.
But as luck would have it, Sunday came with rain, and a superb start for Max saw him jump Piastri and kept Lando on his toes. But on lap 17, Piastri would overtake him back after a mistake in turn 11, and by lap 30, the gap was already 16 seconds. And after a lot of chaos and mistakes from the McLarens, Verstappen managed to cross the line in second place, but McLaren's pace was undeniable. China brought along the first sprint of the year, and Max took P2 in the sprint qualifying, where he then finished P3. But the main event wouldn't be so easy. Despite the gaps being much shorter, he only managed P4 in the qualifying and dropped 2 places for both Ferraris at the start of the main event. By the end of the race, he managed to fight Leclerc to climb back to 4th place. The struggles on the Red Bull were clear, and the first upgrade package came in Japan. In Suzuka, Piastri got provisional pole on his first run, but Lando managed to beat his time in his second one. Max was still on track and needed to find 1/10 of a second in the last sector to secure pole position. And that's exactly what he did.
That is insane. That is insane. Pole position.
Yes! Let's go! Wow! What a lap!
Max Verstappen conquered his first pole position of the year in Japan. A very uneventful race ensued, few opportunities, low degradation, and a lot of management meant that the McLarens were close all race, but never close enough to make a move. So Max won from Lando and was now within 1 point of the championship lead. Despite all the struggles, Max was still dragging the RB21 to places where it shouldn't be. But that would be as close as he got to the championship lead, at least for now. Bahrain exposed the weaknesses of the Red Bull. Max qualified only in P7 and finished the race 6th, but if anyone thought that a bad performance could stop Max, they would be terribly wrong. In Saudi, things went a lot better. After Norris crashed in Q3, Piastri was on provisional pole, and once again, in his last lap, Max would have to find 2.5 of a second, and crucially, he did. By 10 milliseconds, it was the second pole position of the year for Max, and another great radio celebration.
Pole position.
Oh, yes! Oh my god, guys! Simply lovely that!
The start of the race was anything but clean for Max. Piastri got to turn on first and forced him to either slow down or cut the corner. In typical Verstappen fashion, he cut the corner but didn't give back the position. Sure enough, a 5-second time penalty came his way, and since he couldn't build up the 5-second gap before the pits, he lost the position to Oscar in the pits. Despite the missed win, P2 on the back of a terrible Bahrain Grand Prix was an excellent result. Miami started terribly. He qualified P4 for the sprint, and the rain brought a rare pit stop during the race. A very bad release from Red Bull on Max impeded Antonelli from pitting and was given a 10-second penalty. If that wasn't enough, a late safety car meant that Max could not score a single point in the sprints. Despite the rough start, the qualifying for the main event was much better. After the first runs in Q3, Verstappen held provisional pole by 3 milliseconds from Norris and 17 from Piastri. Another fierce battle for pole position. Max was the first out for his last run and improved his time by 0.3 of a second. Norris came just behind him, and by Sector 2 he was only 9 milliseconds away from Max's time. It was crunch time in Sector 3. Lando powered down out of 17 to take the checkered flag, and by 64 milliseconds, Max kept pole position for the Grand Prix, the second in a row. The start of the race wasn't easy. Lando came on the attack and Max was forced to shove him off to defend his position. But before long, Piastri came knocking, followed by Norris once again. Max defended with all his might, but he was no match for the McLarens. And after a very unfortunate timing on the virtual safety car, Russell jumped in to get the podium. Max crossed the line in 4th position. Red Bull kept the upgrades coming, but in Imola they brought the biggest package yet. Both McLarens, Verstappen and Russell were looking in shape. Max took provisional pole after the first run, but Piastri went out first for the last lap and took it from him. With Norris a lot slower, it was down to Max to deny pole position for the championship leader. He put in purple first sector, but by the end of the lap, he was 34 milliseconds short of pole position. He would have the second best seat in the house for Sunday. And Max was seeking revenge. The Red Bull was looking good and Imola is a hard track to overtake. He knew that if he wanted to have a shot at the win, he would have to do it as early as possible. The race starts. Max gets a good launch of the line, as does Piastri. The run to Tamburello is long and Max took the space on the outside. Piastri went on a more defensive line towards the middle of the track, forcing him to brake earlier. Seeing the gap opening, Max took the opportunity and lunged around the outside on an epic move to take the lead. As a true racer once said,
"And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver. Because we are competing to win."
And it's even more poetic when it's done in Tamburello. The rest of the race was smooth sailing. Nobody could stop Max from winning. After all the struggles, with no help from his teammates, Max was still with one foot on the door of the championship and he refused to let go. Unfortunately, there's only so much you can do on your own, and he was about to find out in the worst way. In Monaco, he was 7/10 of pole position in 5th, finishing P4. In Spain he qualified 3rd and was there for most of the race, but a late safety car bunched the field and in a rare mistake from Max at the restart, opened the door to Charles and Russell. Particularly with Russell, things heated up in turn 1. Max had to take the escape route, keeping in front of Russell and refusing to give the position back.
Max, can you let Russell through, please? Let Russell through.
No, I was ahead.
My advice is to let him through.
A few laps later, all the anger behind the helmet boiled over as he fake gave the position back, just to then wheel bang Russell and keep in front of him. Max got a 10-second time penalty, demoting him to P10 at the end of the race. Canada brought a bit of hope with a 2nd place, but that was but a glimmer of hope because after that he qualified P7 in Austria and was taken out of the race by Antonelli on lap 1. Then in Silverstone he only managed 5th, then 4th in Spa and only 9th in Hungary. At this point in the season, Piastri was leading the championship with 284 points, followed by Lando with 275 and finally Max with 187 points, almost 100 points away from the lead. In the meantime, Red Bull kept the upgrades coming and sacked Christian Horner, putting Laurent Mekies in his place. And the upcoming race was Max's home Grand Prix, Zandvoort. The support there is always incredible, so Red Bull wanted to make sure that they had a good result. The McLarens were dominating the qualifying, and despite his best efforts, he only managed P3, over 2.5 tenths away from pole position. The McLarens were on a roll and showing no signs of stopping. In the race, the McLarens were incredible, no chance whatsoever for Max. He could only watch and be content with P3. But then...
I got smoke coming from in the cockpit, I think. I smell something funny.
And Lando Norris
Yeah,
has a
I don't know if
problem.
I'm on fire or not. It doesn't smell good.
Disaster struck for McLaren, specifically Norris. A mechanical failure 7 laps from the end forced him out of the race and promoted Verstappen to second. Despite the good result, Piastri extended his grip on the championship lead. He was now 34 points ahead of Norris and 104 points ahead of Verstappen. None of them knew it at the time, but this would be a turning point of the season. Piastri was now the favorite. Lando looked like he could never recover from the DNF in Zandvoort. Max was 104 points away. It seemed like an impossible task. But as we're about to see, impossible is a word that does not exist in Max Verstappen's dictionary. Monza came around, the temple of speed, and Red Bull brought the biggest package of upgrades of the season. Qualifying was close, small margins defined everything. Lando was out on track and his times seemed promising. He took down the first lap from Max by 54 milliseconds, but Max was also improving his times in his second run, and as he crossed the line, he was P1. Pole position, Max would lead the pack to turn 1 in Monza. The race start though was very messy. Lando got to the inside and it was revenge from Miami. He used the inside to push Verstappen off the outside, he cut the chicane and then gave the position back to Norris. Unfortunately for Lando, the pace on Max was no joke. And after a few laps, he was in the lead again. From then on, there was no chance for anyone. He absolutely dominated the race that marked the beginning of the descent of the championship leader. On that weekend, Lando was comfortably the fastest of the McLarens. The Ferraris were also quick and Piastri could be in danger of being undercut by Leclerc, so McLaren made a call on lap 46. They'd give the first pit stop to Piastri to ensure that Leclerc didn't overtake him. Lando was told over the radio that there was no possibility of Piastri undercutting him.
Well, only if he doesn't undercut, otherwise I'll box first.
There will be no undercut.
But by lap 47, when Lando came into the pits, a terrible pit stop by the team saw him lose a place for Piastri. What happened next potentially defined the course of the championship. McLaren ordered Piastri, the then championship leader, to give back the position to Lando in the name of fairness.
This is a bit like Hungary last year. We pitted in this order for team reasons. Please let Lando pass, then you're free to race.
I mean, we said that a slow pit stop was part of racing. So I don't really get what's changed here.
He's doing it.
But if he really went to do it, then I'll do it.
Lack of faith in the team, lack of confidence in himself from other situations, no one can know for sure. But from that moment onwards, the dominant Piastri that we had seen until that point would cease to exist. After Monza, we headed to the streets of Baku. Qualification, chaos. Mixed tire compounds, red flags galore turned a 1-hour session into a 2-hour marathon. Q3 came and a red flag meant that only 3 drivers could put a lap on the board: Sainz, Lawson and Hadjar. There were 7 minutes to go when the session was resumed. And as Max was about to put his first time on the board, another red flag. Piastri crashed into a wall and was out of qualifying. And with under 4 minutes on the clock, it was a one-shot qualifying for everyone else. Lando made a mistake at the end of his lap and Verstappen crossed the line to take pole position again, and with both of his rivals starting from the back of the top 10, the race for Max was a Sunday drive. Piastri crashed again in the race and DNF'd. Norris was P7. Max was building momentum and the fans started wondering if McLaren kept dropping points like that, if he could come back. Next up was Singapore, and Max qualified second, but crucially the man on pole was George Russell. Mercedes was great that weekend and went on to win the race, with Max coming second after having Norris in his DRS for 16 laps. Texas was up next, and in the sprint Piastri turned into Hülkenberg, causing a collision that hit Lando in the process. Both McLarens were out of the sprint and Max went on to win it. Quali for the main event was pole position yet again, with Piastri only 6th and Lando in 2nd. Max was set to close the gap yet again, and that's exactly what he did. Thanks to Leclerc's defense after Norris lost P2 in a virtual safety car restart, Max would not be challenged for the whole Grand Prix. In Mexico, things got complicated. Lando stepped up his game and drove brilliantly, conquering pole position and winning the race by over 30 seconds. Verstappen came third behind Leclerc and Piastri was once again further back in 5th. The Mexican Grand Prix marked the turning point for Lando Norris. After the DNF in Zandvoort, he was now leading the World Championship by one single point. He was leading for the first time since the beginning of the season. There were still 4 races to go with 2 sprints. Max was 35 points adrift of both of the McLarens. In 2024, Brazil was the race that killed the hopes and dreams for Lando in the championship, and in 2025, the same race could have the same result with Max. A good result in this weekend was crucial and sprint qualifying was tough. Max only managed P6 while Lando was on pole and Piastri was 3rd. The sprint was chaos. A damp track with slick tires was bound to see drivers making mistakes and Piastri crashed out of the race in the CNS. Norris won and Verstappen came home 4th. Something needed to be done.
Mixed conditions today, did it feel any better?
No, it was the same. I think we still maximized the result. We need to find something now before qualifying.
Red Bull changed whatever they could between the sprint and the quali for the main event to try and get the car fired up and give a chance for Max to fight on Sunday. And as the quali rolled along, all the cars went out as usual. But there was an unusual thing about this session. Max was P18. Crucially, he was in the mid of a hot lap, but he was at the end of the second sector, slower than Hülkenberg in P15. He needed to find the time in sector 3 to salvage his weekend, to salvage his championship hopes. And as he crossed the line, it was close. By just 66 milliseconds.
I've no grip.
Max was out of qualifying and would start the race in P16. An absolute disaster for the driver that was looking unstoppable, and even worse, Norris conquered pole position again. Difficult times required drastic measures. With the championship hopes that were already slim at risk of becoming null, Red Bull worked tirelessly overnight to find a solution. Max would use a different setup, start from the pit lane and fit a brand new engine to the back of the RB21. If he was to go down, he would go down swinging. Lap 1 was chaos, lots of incidents and debris on the track. The safety car was called out. Right after the restart, Leclerc was taken out by Antonelli, who had been hit by Piastri, triggering a virtual safety car. During this time, Max might have gone over some debris and picked up a slow puncture. He had to go into the pits on lap 8, yet another setback to his race. But with one silver lining, he now didn't have to use the hard tires because he started on them and went on to the mediums. And so the journey began. Lap 8, P18, Verstappen started making moves. One after the other, he overtook everyone in his sight. By lap 21, he was already P5, lapping just as fast as the leaders, the two McLarens. So he started closing the gap. And the first position came for free. When Piastri served his penalty, Verstappen came out well ahead of him. By lap 56, Max went to the softs. The last stint was full attack on the Mercedes in front. He overtook Russell around the outside in the CNS by lap 63. And with 8 laps left, he set his aims on Antonelli in front. He got inside the DRS on lap 66, but Kimi didn't budge. He soaked all the pressure and the aging softs were not able to give him that last overtake.
To be on the podium from the pit lane, I didn't expect that at all, even with a puncture as well. An incredible result for us, very happy with that, and just very proud of everyone within the team as well.
After starting from the pit lane in one of his toughest weekends of the season, Max sprinkles the magic onto the track on Sunday and brings a podium back home. A surreal performance, a statement that you can never count him out. He will fight for it until the end. Quali in Vegas was wet and tricky. The McLaren on Norris' hands seemed to be on rails with all of the grip in the world. Max did the best he could, but Norris took pole position and he had to settle for second place. In the Grand Prix, Norris felt the pressure and was eager to win the championship right there. He crossed Verstappen off the start but didn't manage to stop in time for turn 1, dropping 2 positions. Max took the lead and did what he does best: drive off into the sunset. Lando ended the race 20 seconds behind Max, but he was managing a problem in the last few laps that made him lose a lot of time. Regardless, P2 would still be a good enough result, because for him it would basically guarantee him the championship. He would only have to turn the wheel in the next race to guarantee the championship. But then, disaster struck McLaren again. Both cars disqualified from the race after the plank wear was found to exceed the mandatory 9mm. Lando's side of the garage spotted the issue during the race. Lando spent the last laps of the Grand Prix lifting in the high-speed corners to avoid further wear, dangerously close to getting overtaken by Russell. But it was to no avail. Verstappen was now tied with Piastri and 24 points away from Lando with 2 races to go. An almost impossible task that was now only very difficult. And so we marched on to the penultimate race of the season in Qatar. Piastri suddenly woke up. After a string of bad results, he came to a track that he enjoys, determined to bring the fight to the last round. He took sprint pole and Max was shockingly outqualified by Tsunoda in SQ3. He was down in P6. He drove back to P4 in the sprint but was unable to beat Norris. Neither him nor Piastri could afford to lose any points this weekend if they wanted a chance to fight for the championship. It was all or nothing for the race, and Lando knew it. At the start of the race, he didn't fight Verstappen too hard, opting to play it safe. The car is good. P3 in the final 2 races would easily make him champion. Things were good as they were, but this weekend had a special rule though. No driver could do more than 25 laps on a single set of tires, and with a 57 lap race, this meant that a 2 pit stop was on the cards. But the true question here is, when are you going to stop your drivers? A safety car in lap 8 dissipated all the doubts. It was just at the right time to take a cheap pit stop and go to the end on just 2 sets of tires. Such an obvious decision that everyone went into the pits. Everyone except for the McLarens. A huge blunder by the team. No one could believe when they saw Max in fresh new rubber just behind both of the McLarens and the safety car. Yet another self-inflicted disaster. Especially for Norris, he was stuck behind Antonelli and Sainz after the last pit stop. Down in P5, with Max winning the race, P3 would not be enough to guarantee his championship if Max won Abu Dhabi. But right at the closing stages, in the middle of the last lap, Antonelli makes a mistake and gifts a place to Norris, crossing the line 4th. Time and time again, against all odds, Verstappen was inevitable. After being 104 points off the lead, he managed to surpass Piastri and was now sitting 12 points behind Lando. In a car that could not race for wins for a huge part of the season, he had now 7 to his name, exactly the same as Norris and Piastri. It all came down to the last race of the season in Abu Dhabi. For Max, the math was very simple. He had to win. And even if he won, Lando had to be in P4, any higher than that and the championship was his. In a season finale, everything can happen. Think back to 2021, when it was chaos right at the end. In 2010, Vettel won in a race where Alonso had one hand on the trophy, and again in 2012 with an amazing comeback after losing the front wing in a collision at the beginning of the race. Nothing can be taken for granted. Tension was high as qualifying started. Max and Norris dominated the practices. Max even hit his real pace in the long runs in FP2, but quali, all masks were lifted. Max dominated the first run in Q3 on provisional pole by 0.3 of a second. The McLarens didn't want to take risks and they were the first out of the pits for the second run. At the end of the first sector, neither McLaren was gaining on Verstappen. Meanwhile, Max was behind them, putting in his second lap with a purple first sector. By the end of sector 2, Piastri was 0.2 of a second slower than Max, while Norris was down just 1.5 tenths. Max was lighting up the sectors behind with again purple sector on sector 2. Piastri crossed the line first, unable to beat the provisional pole. Lando was next, crossing the line, and by just 0.1 of a second, it was not enough to dethrone Max. Pole position was already his by the time he crossed the line. 48th pole position of his career means that he'll start first in the race that decides it all. The race started and Max bolted in front of Lando, who kept second place. Needing to win, Piastri went for it in the end of the sector 2 and pulled a superb move. Lando was in the last position that could guarantee him the championship. Leclerc was all over him but was unable to pass him. Lando pitted into traffic, a dangerous decision. He couldn't afford to lose any time and he swiftly passed them all. But there was still one.
Okay, we expect Norris to be your DRS within one lap. All you can when he catches.
Yuki was in front of him in the second Red Bull, determined to hold him up. This could be decisive. Yuki defended the inside, but Lando doubled down and was even more inside. In the end, he couldn't hinder Norris's pace in the slightest. A track limits violation was issued to Lando for passing beyond the white line, but nothing came of it. Halfway through the race, and the hope for Max to become champion relied on Charles Leclerc. But with just 15 laps left of racing, Leclerc was unable to pace quicker than Norris. With the laps ticking down, Max crossed the finish line to win the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The second to cross the line was Piastri. And then there was Lando. Lots of moments in the season could have swung this the other way. Kimi in Qatar, Russell in Spain, the pit release in Miami, the DNF in Austria, and the shortcomings in Brazil. GP was devastated, Red Bull was devastated, but Max responded like a true champion does.
Max, you have given everything. You can be proud of that, mate. Hold your head up high.
Congrats, guys. When it went back in that second half of the season, we can be really, really proud of that. So don't be too disappointed. I'm definitely not disappointed. I'm really proud of everyone to never give up.
Despite not winning the title, this will go down as one of Verstappen's best seasons of all time. He won more than anyone else in 2025. And like Alonso in 2012, he was able to drag an unworthy car to the highest of stages, the finale in Abu Dhabi. A legend-defining season. His legacy is not yet done as he trails the path of the eternal champion.